Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks, wherever the heck in the world you are. It's the one and only V, the Guerrilla Economist, coming to you live on this edition of Rogue News in the Morning with my main man, CJ, working the airwaves, making sure that this broadcast is coming out crispy and clean, you know what I mean? We got the flux capacitors on full bore. We are bringing it to you live and raw when we have with us our special guest. The one and only Veles is here. He is a geostrategic mind working with government contractors and within the defense industry himself. He is a real guy with a real brain, one of the most smartest guys I know. So it's a treat. Gentlemen, lots of things going on, but before we begin, check out our paid sponsors, mycbdedibles.com, mycbdedibles.com, the new product, Delta 8. If you are quaking because your local governor decided to shut down your state or your city and you have a lot of anxiety, go to mycbdedibles.com and check out the Delta 8 product. Perhaps the depression of COVID-19 lockdowns has led you to eating bonbons. Put down the bonbons and get yourself one of them delicious, delectable treats over at mycbdedibles.com. Go there and tell them the 8-man sent you. And with that being said, CJ, Veles, what's going on, guys?
CJ, you have the lead.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday to you.
We made it another week.
We made it.
We're alive, gentlemen. We're alive.
CJ, you had a point for us this morning. Did you want to lead with that?
Huge.
Yeah, this is very interesting, and this just happened not too long ago, but this came out via Axios. And again, we're not stating anything in regards to the election or conspiracy or anything. We know that that the Electoral College has deemed Joe Biden as the interim.
Did you put that in the description box? You have to put that in the description box.
That in the description
Dude,
box.
we're going to get killed again. They're going to take us down for another 10 days, CJ.
So that's out there for the tech oligarchs. But needless to say, so this broke via Axios that if acting Defense Secretary Chris Miller has ordered a Pentagon-wide halt to cooperation with the transition of President-elect Biden. Shocking officials across the Defense Department, senior administration officials tell Axios. So, gentlemen, this is huge.
It is.
Massive.
It is, and it's interesting because I don't recall a prior case or something like this has happened where you've already deemed somebody worthy of these debriefings and then pulled them. Now, it's not as critical as, say, a sitting chief executive having their own intelligence community saying we're not talking to you. That would be biblical. But yeah, it's definitely an eye raiser, and it could beg the question: is this about Hunter, or are there other factors at play?
That is the question. This guy is a very strategic. Chris, I'm a big fan of Chris Miller. You do some reading on his on what this guy did, especially in the battlefield, the tours he's done, the men he commanded. This guy's not a pansy. He's not a pansy. This guy's a frontline kind of guy, a straight shooter, and very strategic. This is not supposed to happen. Guys, let me explain something to you. In an election year, when there is transitioning between one administration to the other administration, there is never a shutdown of communications, period, especially national security briefings or Defense Department briefings or sharing of intelligence is not shut down. They don't stop it. Okay, they continually feed it out until until the president, the president, of course, gets a security clearance. The president-elect gets a security clearance. Some of the members of his cabinet gets a security clearance, and the rest are kind of waited on until they are, approved for security clearance and whatnot. But this level, you never see this behavior ever before. Something is up. We know that there are a myriad of things that are happening in the background, especially with Hunter Biden. Do you know that he's doing an art exhibit in New York?
What?
Oh, yeah. He's doing an art exhibit. I didn't know this. He's a painter. He's a painter. He paints. He's like a George W. Bush. He paints pictures.
I was going to say, is that code for something?
I don't know, man. I'm not sure. But this is remarkable.
You're absolutely right, V. And I mean, the other consideration too here is in any government transition, or I'll go there, first world government, you want as smooth a transition as possible.
Yep.
And so to stop this process, and major decision makers need that intel because the world is so fluid. So yeah, it's definitely something to monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge stuff. Fellas, what's your thought, man?
Well, on that one, and I hate to keep going to my normal response with topics like that, we gotta keep an eye on that. I know the show yesterday with Juan. He was talking a bit about the different, we'll call them irregularities in internet service and email service around the country these days. Which I'm obviously I've shared with both of you. I'm keeping an eye on because normally, and for those of you on the show, normally during the spring equinox and the fall equinox, because of the Earth's position, when I used to work in telecommunications, the satellites move in front of the sun. So it's not uncommon that you'll get some disruptions. I used to have to tell clients every year, just reminding you the spring and fall equinoxes are coming up. You're going to have probably some service disruptions for about a day or two. Don't think there's anything wrong with your service. But this is the winter solstice. So for this to be happening now, I know people have said, well, there's solar flare activity or whatever. I've checked some of the astronomical websites. It's not enough. So I don't know if it's. I had a friend of mine ask me, well, with so many people working remotely, and I'm like, oh, don't even get started with that. That was last spring. They worked that out last spring.
Right.
So I don't know. It could be. I mean, there was a lot of traffic about hackers.
It's pretty funny you said about there's an ETF, man. There's an ETF that's called Hack. Okay, it's a cybersecurity ETF, and Hack was pumping right before they actually had this hack that occurred with the nuclear facility and whatnot, and all these cyber irregularities, Veles, has been going on. Hack is pumping, man.
It is. The other thing I've noticed, and this is this was a comment I actually wanted to make on a prior show. There's a lot of things in this world I'm always a little concerned about or keep my eye on. But as much as you both and some of the guests on the show and so on have talked about retired military, active military, and the let's just say the precision and capabilities of certain special forces people. One of the players out there who is definitely someone I'm always mindful of and incredibly afraid of is what are known as these hacker collectives.
Yeah.
There's a philosophy in military science, and we've used it sometimes on this show, about what's called asynchronous warfare, which is you spend $1,000, but you cause $1 million worth of damage to your adversary, or you use some sort of unusual technique at your disposal to harm another side. And this is one of the reasons why Russia, or not both, but their military, their intelligence services, and even their government officials, why they rely so heavily on hackers, because they're very good at what they do. They're basically pirates of the internet. Some of them are unbelievably dangerous as far as their skill set. And I hate to say this because I've worked in the industry where I've worked with IT security people, where it's the age-old battle of how much money are you going to spend to defend your institution. When I worked for a smaller firm, and I was in a couple of their data centers, we were monitoring some attacks that were coming against this firm that operated in the insurance industry. And a couple of the executives were there, and they said, well, there's only a few per week. And I said, but you don't understand. I said, when I worked with GE, we got attacked by every 8th grader with a computer on up. So we always knew there were thousands of attacks an hour across those networks. But I said, these attacks are very precise. They know exactly who you are. They know exactly what data they're trying to steal. And I said, in fact, for our business model, this type of attack is more dangerous than even what GE was dealing with. And I said, no, you can't take this lightly. Just because there's fewer doesn't mean you're safer. And so there's a lot of these folks out there. They're for hire. I hate to use this analogy. They're like the Steve Bannon of the internet. They're for hire. And God only knows who's buying their services these days, because you always have to ask the question, are these state actors? Are these somebody who's running a department in an intelligence agency somewhere, who's hired one of these groups? And again, I'm always very sensitive when I hear things like, well, it's definitely Russia or it's definitely North Korea. And it's like, unless I can talk to the chief IT security architect who told you that, I don't believe it. Because you wouldn't believe the degree to which these folks can mask who they are. I mean, by bouncing various attacks around different countries and equipment in different countries and so on, you'll never know who they really are, almost unless you've got somebody on the inside or you planted a tracker inside one of their networks. So always take with a grain of salt. I know I've said this on the show a number of times, folks, about trust but verify. Especially like, and this is a whole other this is a show in and of itself, is what really happened to Sony many years ago, back in 2014, 2015, when Sony got hacked. That was not North Korea. I can assure you of that. That was not North Korea, and that's got a lot of history behind it. What really was going on there? But it's the same thing right now. We keep talking about, we're coming up on several key dates. The 21st on Monday. We've got a number of different things going on politically inside, resolving our election debacle here. And V, you've said it many, many times. We're reading other people's email. It's very, very hard. This is why I keep going back to my mantra about, you got to watch the corners. You got to watch the less than important news stories about trade or other political things going on behind the scenes, or agreements being signed that aren't really on the front page, because everyone involved is very good at keeping you distracted. And so that's why you need everybody involved here in this conversation to try and get to the bottom of these things.
Absolutely right.
Did you guys want to go on current events topics? Or
yeah, let's hit it.
Or could I hit a continuation of where we were last week, with moving on from the neo-enlightenment topic to kind of a different kind of education piece, if I could?
Go for it, Veles. It's
whatever you want to touch base on first, man. It's your platform.
Okay.
Don't give the whole platform away, V. Give them the show.
Sorry. It's your show. It's your show.
I'll do my best to try to keep this within 15 minutes. Well, it's your show. I'm just the guest.
No, you're a comrade in arms. And CJ, after this, I want you to bring up the video siege, that the link that I sent you and Gus about our brave frontline workers who are taking the vaccine. That video was priceless. But go ahead, Veles, you first.
Well, the area I want to touch upon, kind of last week, we talked about the neo-enlightenment and why that philosophy matters to many of the world's elites, and where their minds are about what they're focused on, what they believe they're trying to achieve, and so on. And part of that, in the next phase of that, is kind of walking through. No, we're not going to talk about the Masons. We're not going to talk about the Masonic Order. I'm using this as an example purely. But a lot of these I don't like using the word secret societies, but a lot of these societies and groups that they're members of, they do tend to follow kind of the same model that the Masonic Order does. Now, the Masonic Order has two rites, if you will. You have the English rite, which has 3 degrees. You have the Scottish rite, which has 33 degrees. Most people are familiar with the whole thing about the 33 degrees. And the importance there is, like, as you go up through each of these degrees, you learn more and more and more about some of the more philosophical or hidden elements of the organization. But they don't let you move to that next degree until they think you're ready. Plus, the other thing is by the time you get to, say, the 5th, 6th, 7th degree, the things you learned in the first and the second, like, you understand that there's, like, actually not one meaning to what they taught you, but like 3, and it's all hidden. And it's a very process-oriented way to make sure that each initiate on their way to becoming a master can be determined whether or not they're safe with that additional knowledge, they can be trusted with it. It's an excellent organizational model, really, because I have seen elements like it in government institutions, in commercial institutions, the dynamics of powerful families, and so on, especially with the intelligence community. And I know that's a very broad brush, but a lot of the different agencies, whether it's the National Geospatial Agency, who studies maps and things from satellite intelligence, the National Security Agency, who monitors electronic communications, the Central Intelligence Agency, who has more field agents. And actually, the other thing about the CIA most people forget is the CIA has a ton of PhDs, and all they do is just sit around and study stuff, ancient history, modern history, etc. Each of those agencies tend to operate in a similar way. You cannot be the issuing of security clearance is very similar. It's rare, unless there's conditions why, that someone would bypass, for official use only, then secret, then top secret, then from top secret is kind of going sideways to secret compartmentalized. It's very rare to walk somebody directly into a secret compartmentalized role. I mean, it happens, but you have to kind of go through that process. And one of the analogies I like to use about this, as well as all of the topics we cover, is there was a, and I've looked for it, I can't find it. There was a comedy piece on Saturday Night Live where it was late 80s, early 90s, where it shows a guy sitting on a park bench. And it was a campaign ad at that time by an insurance company that used to do this thing about people who like almost were killed in a car accident or whatever, but survived, and how the insurance company was there to help them through their troubles. Where the person is always looking at the camera saying, I thought I was going to die. But on the Saturday Night Live piece, the camera pulls back and there's an angel, wings, sitting next to this guy on a park bench, who looks at him and goes, but you did die. And the guy looks at the angel and says, well, now that I'm dead, he goes, I have so many questions. And the angel's like, well, sure. What do you want to know? And he goes, like, what's the most amazing thing you could tell me? And the angel's like, I can't do that. And the guy's like, why not? And he goes, because you'd wink out of existence. You can't handle it. Your earthly brain just can't handle something like that. And he goes, all right, fine. He goes, what's the 1,000th most incredible thing? And the angel looks at him dead serious and goes, professional wrestling is real. And the guy's like, no way. And the angel's like, yeah, I know, right. He goes, so see, if professional wrestling is real, and that's like the 1,000th most incredible thing you can't handle, you can't handle anything more serious than that. And that's sometimes how I feel about some of the topics we talk on the show, or the other guests that you've got, is we're trying to introduce many of you out there in the audience to a number of different topics. And some of this stuff is heavy. Some of it is rumor and innuendo, and the real story is almost wonky. So the whole thing about the degrees and the Masonic order and how they tend to operate is followed by a lot of these organizations, whether it is think tanks, quote unquote, like the Trilateral Commission, or, as we were talking last week, the Aspen Institute, or the economic forums in Europe, or what have you. Even some of the conferences I used to attend in my old life, you would find that even a person with my kind of level of clearance and so on, I was only allowed to attend certain things. And then after a time, I was allowed to attend other things. And again, like I said, this model exists in a number of different areas. It's used in corporate management. Nobody ever just walks straight into a C-level executive spot if you hadn't had one before, et cetera. Religious organizations, social fraternities, the list goes on. And what's kind of interesting here is, in kind of concluding on this topic, is there's other guests on the show who've discussed the importance of Cecil Rhodes. And this was kind of the joke I said on our first show back in October, where I was joking with V that I said, when people ask me, well, can you boil down what's going on right now? And it's like, well, how much time do you have? Because I've got to start in 1850. The reason why I've used that reference is because of the importance of Cecil Rhodes. And Cecil Rhodes, for whom Rhodesia was named, right, is one of these players that goes back to the London Corporation. He's one of these people that goes back to a lot of very critical events in history. And Rhodes was the guy who basically got the Morgan family in the United States pulled into a lot of the goals and so on of the London Corporation. And then from Morgan, it kind of led to the Rockefeller family in kind of this progression. And what's interesting is Rhodes, through 2 or 3 key universities in Britain, he recruited key people into his society, which followed one of these models of each successive level. You're learning more, you're being trusted more, seeing if you're ready to be kind of this inner cabal that he needed to achieve his aims. But what I always found interesting is about 5 years before Rhodes died, and a lot of people, there's a ton of books, I got a number of them here on my bookshelf. There's a number of people who point to Rhodes, and they should, because it's a key piece of missing history. But he's one of the people who was very keen on using this kind of model to kind of filter out the people that shouldn't be there. Other groups, by the way, who use this kind of thing is our famous Skull and Bones. Scientology, by the way, is very, very oriented on this kind of model. Same thing with the Nexium cult and so on. So with Rhodes, he followed that model. And as you move through the 1850s into the later 1800s, and here he's out in the field, there's no other way to say it. He's leading wars against the Boer, the Dutch, in South Africa to increase Britain's prominence in that region, to get control of the mines for natural resources, predominantly gold and precious stones and things. and had this vision of turning Africa into just a big resource location for, the ultimate third world for European powers, but with England first among them. But what's ironic is in Rhodes' final years, like the last 5 years or so of his life, Rhodes, who himself saw himself at the top of this structure, at the top of this pyramid, if you will, didn't realize that there were people above him. And that is a real shocker if you think about it, because here is somebody who's described and identified as one of the key architects of events that really have led us to where we are today. Everything from the economic readjustments that we see internationally, a lot of the destabilization, if you will, of a lot of economics internationally and so on, all of that really began with Rhodes and a lot of these people that he put into key positions. But it was only later that Rhodes realized that people above him had actually intended for him just to be used and thrown away later. And he realized too late that there was a key person in the British government named Alfred Miller that was really the true powers that be wanted Alfred Miller to take over, not who Rhodes wanted to take over. And that also kind of dials back into last week's discussion on the Enlightenment topic, where I made the comment about whether it's Bezos or Gates or some of these other people. They are not multi-generational families. They are not multi-generational wealth. They are a flash in the pan. They're a very powerful flash in the pan, and a very dangerous one based on current events just in the past 5 years. But for me personally, I always look at them and think, but you're a one-time thing. You aren't the grandson. Oh, sure, I know that Gates and some of the others, their parents were fairly influential. But it's not like we're talking about the family who runs Cargill out of Minnesota. We're not talking about the Bechtel family out of Northern California and a whole host of others that are the family who runs Cargill, which transports food throughout most of the world. They have their own transportation network. They also own the patent on stevia, the artificial sweetener. The Cargill family, they've got 15 family members alone on their board of directors. The family's 155 years old. They're literally on their third or fourth generation, depending on how you look at it. When I compare a family like that to Bezos, and again, it goes back to what I said last week, I'm not implying in any way, shape, or form harm or danger to Jeff Bezos. I'm simply saying if something were to happen to him, Amazon would continue. Whether his money going into certain groups or not would continue is hard to say. But where the Cargill family has 5, 10, what have you on they've got 15 people of the family immediately on their board of directors. If a couple of the Bechtel family, the Cargill family were impeded or harmed or what have you, nothing on earth is going to stop that family and what their interests are. Now, I've never seen anything that says, disclaimer, I've never seen anything that indicates the Cargill family's up to no good or anything else. But it's just, I compare a group like that to, say, Bezos and others that are always in the news. And it equally goes back to our show where we discussed Soros. Everyone is identifying Soros, and he's taking that fire like a hood ornament to keep attention away from the other people. And V, you'd identified, I can't think of the gentleman's name at the moment, but the English lord who recently was made head of Soros's foundations and so on.
Lord Malik Brown.
Yes.
Lord Malik.
That is, folks, that's a classic example right there. Is Cecil Rhodes is out there making the world safe for the ultimate in colonialism. And what he doesn't understand is you are in charge of a lot, but you're not in charge. We above you are in charge, and we're putting Miller in to take over for you later, even if you don't like Miller. And it's the same thing with Malik Brown. In fact, I think I recall reading some comments from other folks that Brown had always been one of the key players behind Soros the whole time. But that concludes that topic, so I'll open the floor.
CJ, real quick, shifting gears here. This just popped up. Can you share my screen real quick, CJ? We talked about Christopher Miller. We talk about the SecDef, who is a certified badass. And he is completely on. Today's the 18th, gentlemen. What was the report that was due today?
The
DNI.
Cybersecurity, right?
Yes.
Cybersecurity stuff.
Was there a hack? Yes, there was a hacker in the elections. There was some meddling. And, they named some enemies, of course, China and Iran. And, of course, they threw in Russia in there for good measure because, that's just politics. You got to have some Russia phobia in there.
Right.
Just to get the sludge moving through the pipes in D.C. But So the DNI report came out, and then immediately what happens? Well, today, Christopher Miller and Ezra Cohen Watnick has completely shut down, clamped down all communications to the Biden transition team. Why? Now, we talked about this just a few moments ago. Today, and notice the time on this, at 3:30. Now, Veles, you just mentioned 33 and the
Right.
33-degree masonry. It's not coincidence. 3:30 p.m. today, who is the president meeting with?
I did not know.
He is meeting with the acting Secretary of Defense.
Miller, right?
Yep, he's meeting with Christopher Miller today at 3:30.
Interesting.
Boom. There's the presidential schedule. I had on the screen right now.
Oh,
You guys can see it.
I didn't see. You had it right there.
I had it right there. Look at that. Take a good look. There you go.
And here I had been concerned about the delay in the DNI report as being another delaying tactic, much like we're seeing with the FBI right now, where it reminds me of the old joke of the comedian who did the thing about, oh dear God, the former head of the United Nations, Kurt Waldheim, where he was a Jewish comedian and he was joking about that he's setting up the Kurt Waldheim Fund because he said, folks, we got to help Kurt because from 1939 to 1946, he just can't recall where the hell he was. You know, because for those who are unaware, Kurt Waldheim was a member of the SS, the German SS during World War II. And so, you know, the comedian jokes and says, I was in Vienna drinking coffee in August of 1939, and then suddenly it's 1946. And that's like how I feel about all these different agencies like the FBI. Where's the laptop? We don't know. Oh, well, we found it. Do you have emails from these deceased people? We thought no. Well, wait, 9 months later, we found it. So with the DNI, yeah, it begs the question, are you withholding the report because you're waiting on additional information that's critical? And given, I hate to say this, but I mean, like, because everything right now is critical, I'm sure everybody's trying to double check everything they're doing before they make it public or go to the president with it. Yeah, it's hard. You know, I part of me is like that this is indeed orchestrated. I would say my gut certainly felt right before the Donald took office and after he did. I mean, I think we talked about this on a prior show that you looked at all the countries where he went and he sent his kids in advance to personally carry messages because there was all that flare up with the State Department saying, hey, we're the ones that communicate with other foreign governments. Why are your kids flying all around the world? And we don't, like, they're bypassing our embassies. They're going straight from the airport to the, prime minister's residence or the king's residence. We have no idea what you're talking to other people about. And Trump's just sitting there laughing and then gets on a plane and goes to Saudi Arabia and then does the unbelievably symbolic, never before happened thing, flies directly from Saudi Arabia to Israel.
Yep.
Which is a big no-no, folks, because there's rules. There were rules in the Middle East about you can't ever have a direct flight from Israel to an Arab country. It was just leftover anger from the 6-Day War and similar. So it was hugely symbolic that the president had flown directly from Saudi Arabia to Israel. And then he hit a few other spots after that. But the last few months have been so chaotic. Somebody's got a plan. He has a plan. His allies have a plan. But I think the plan is so critical. That's why it's so hard for us to even remotely get our arms around where in the hell are you guys going with this?
Yeah.
CJ, by the way, thank you for the graphic there.
Yeah, I was up late last night and I was gonna try to find a better one, but I'm like, hey, you know what? This looks good. This, I think of Veles walking in, what he's strutting around in. Like V for Veles. There we go.
It's like V's cousin.
He is. We're actually related. That's the little secret behind the scenes, guys. That's the secret behind the scenes.
We grew up in New York together before I moved to the Midwest. I had to be closer to CJ in case he runs into technical problems.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's bring up the video, Siege, of our brave frontline workers who are convincing America to go ahead and take the shot. Let's play that video. And again, COVID-19 is a real threat. We advocate social distancing and wearing of masks. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyway, go ahead. Make sure you blow this up, CJ, so they can see it. Oh, here we go. Brave. The doctor's breathing. Oh my God, it's gonna hurt. Notice the plunger's already down. There's nothing in there.
Oh, good one.
Oops.
Oh, you're so brave, Ted. Thank you. Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for the shot.
Yeah, off camera they had a conversation. That's not the real stuff, is it? No, I'd never put that in you.
Yeah, I never put that in. There's literally, I mean, look, the plunger was already depressed down, so
Right.
all he did is poke him with a needle. There was nothing in there, and he just pulled it out. Oh yeah, it's amazing. What a joke!
I saw Vice President Pence got his shot today, and my thought has always been, again, trust but verify. I know he's a good Midwesterner, but I've seen a lot of documentation. I mean, folks, real honest to God documentation, not folks just kind of talking out the side of their mouth, from other folks who've done research about that. And Pence is heavily connected, has been for years, to the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, that's a huge thing in Indiana, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like pharma. Everybody there is like working for pharmacies. Wait, Siege used to work for a pharmacy. Where is Siege? Siege, you there?
Yeah, I did. I was just watching this one video that came up.
The nurse who passed out.
Oh, that's great. Play that again, please.
Is she the one who went into anaphylactic shock out in California, or is this a different one?
Do we have volume? I want that exact moment where she passes out. Can you put the volume on? Here we go.
I think it's Tennessee.
We have no volume.
Kuko, we have no volume, Kuko.
My team will be getting first chances to get the vaccine. And I know that it's really, I'm sorry, I'm feeling really dizzy.
She's so brave.
I'm sorry.
It's like George Bush at the dinner in Japan.
Faint.
She's going down. She's going down. She's down.
Wow, that's great acting. That's really good. This way she doesn't. Is this after the shot or before the shot?
After.
It's after.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Every junkie in a tent city in San Francisco sees this video is lining up right now.
Oh
wow. God. Well, I'm very confident now, guys. I don't know about you. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see between today and Monday what happens, both investigatively as well as the vaccines. I also have to wonder, I'll throw $1 on the table and make a bet. I have to wonder whether or not certain organizations are going to start freezing, not stopping, but freezing the administration of the drug for further study. Hell, who knows? They may make it a triple dose thing. This was the whole reason why they said you had to get 2 doses, because if they gave it to you all at once, it would just knock you the heck out. May have to break it down into 3 doses here. It really seems to do a number on your system.
The funny part is it's like people are like, so I can stop wearing a mask and go places? No.
Yeah, full disclaimer, we are not giving any type of medical
no
advice.
Medical advice.
No medical advice. No, I'm being serious here.
Oh, damn it.
No
Damn
medical
it. We got
advice.
Let's go edit this out. I have a feeling they're going to nail us.
Any content that we discussed was public content that was on another site. Right. We did not create any of the content that's listed.
We're artistically commenting on it. We're just artistically commenting on it.
In the interest of public safety, we're wondering whether or not this needs to be a 3-dose injection instead of 2, in the interest of public safety.
Exactly. And everybody should wear their masks and socially distance. And official sources have confirmed that the Electoral College has said that Joseph Robinette Biden is the president-elect of the United States.
I, for one, welcome our alien insect overlords.
Yeah, I, for one, am. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. Anyway, what else is on the radar, gentlemen?
I continue to watch as everyone who has, and I'm going somewhere with this, everyone who has the means, keyword, to get out of California or New York is leaving the state. I'm wondering how much inflation is about to go through the ceiling in the state of Texas with so many folks moving businesses and their employees down there.
New Yorkers are going to Florida, and Californians are winding up in Texas and Idaho.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as I shared with you guys, the For those of you out there who don't know, there was a communication by Larry Ellison over at Oracle out to all of his employees, because a number of his senior executives have been asking, Larry, will you be moving to Texas with the rest of us? And I kid you not, folks, it's been in the public domain and in a couple of the industry websites, but it was confirmed to me by people inside the firm that he sent out a company-wide email and said, no, I'll be operating the company from my private island in Hawaii.
Yep.
And
well,
buddy,
I mean,
go ahead, JB.
I mean, speaking of hot on the heels, Veles, of what you just said, I mean, high frequency data reveals NYC office towers are, drumroll please, empty. Aside from the fact that Mayor de Blasio is the greatest idiot on planet Earth and is threatening full-scale lockdown and shutdown after Christmas, city's commercial real estate is in dire straits, as the latest high-frequency data shows. Foot traffic inside the financial district is decreasing. According to Bloomberg, this means that the city's skyscrapers are empty once again as coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are surging, keeping workers at home. Mobile phone location data from Plicar AI shows foot traffic in the first week of December was 20.4% of what it was in 2019, and down almost 24.2 down from October, the lowest since August. Plicar AI's data is a sobering reality that despite vaccine distribution across the country, the once hopeful return of office workers to the financial district was nothing more than a distant dream. The second wave, and that's exactly what happened, man. Dude, New York City's done, Veles. New York City is finished. It's done. They've killed everything,
which is sad. It's sad for a lot of reasons, and I've had friends of mine reach out to me and ask in a number of different lines of work, well, is it that they, quote unquote, they feel that once the smoke clears and Joe Biden is president, as the Electoral College has said, that New York will recover, that we'll just, that businesses will get restarted and this, that, and the other. And I said, this kind of reminds me of the thing about the carrier pigeon. The Cincinnati Zoo had the last living carrier pigeon, and there was like a huge reward if somebody could find a female carrier pigeon so that they could repopulate. For those of you who may or may not remember, the United States was once filled, at least the eastern part of the United States was filled with a carrier pigeon, and they were almost considered a nuisance. So people were paid a nickel for every dead bird you brought in. And that the
originally
species,
brought in as a food source by the French, by the way.
Yes, much like the starling.
Fried stuffed pigeon is a thing of beauty, my friend. If you've been to like northern Africa, like in Egypt, and even some places, some spots in France, some French restaurants were served as well. Stuffed pigeon. But go ahead.
Yes, let that be a lesson again, folks, about not bringing in non-native species, as the citizens of Georgia can attest when it came to kudzu, which they thought might make an interesting plant until it got out of the lab and started pulling down power lines. So they offered.
What about the morons with snakehead fish? Oh my God.
Well, yeah, and then we got that weird armored whatever it is clogging up everything in the Great Lakes. The point was to save the species, and years later, experts had said it wouldn't have mattered, because there's not enough genetic diversity left in the species. If you'd found another bird, the two of them could not produce a viable community of survivors. And I feel the same way about certain cities and their business communities. I know, and V, you live there, but I mean, like, I remember how New York City, Manhattan specifically, how Manhattan was back in the 70s and early 80s versus when I got out there in the early 90s and things had really started to turn around. I'm walking the streets of 43rd Street during a Model United Nations program, and local New Yorkers and others who were in my little group were looking at me going, you should have been here 10 years ago. I mean, you need the 82nd Airborne to come down here. I mean, it was rough. But I don't see how you can renew Manhattan at this point. I mean, it's like we've lost genetic diversity in the business community. It's not strong enough. And when the scions of Silicon Valley, I don't think, I don't think Google or Apple or some of the others are going to leave Silicon Valley. But when the firms who originally made Silicon Valley what it is, like HP and Oracle, are leaving, now granted, Elon Musk is a complete outlier. I mean, he's just, Elon is in a category all his own. But when those kinds of firms are leaving California, it presents some interesting outcomes, because number one, it means the firms who remain have far more power and influence on what goes on in California, which may in fact be what they were trying to achieve in the first place. It also means Texas's influence, if this continues, is going to grow. They they're probably going to gain some House seats here in redistricting if this keeps up. But there was a article I read the other day that was quite interesting, and the title of the article was "The United City States of America." And as I was reading through that, I thought, boy, this author nailed it. That's it. Is you've got a handful of cities across the United States, almost like feudal Italy, before it was united back into a single country back in the 1800s. We've got a whole host of cities in the United States that are basically determining what goes on in the rest of the country. It's the author made a comment where they said it's a handful of key city states and everybody else. And everybody else is just like livestock wandering around out in a field, waiting to find out what our masters want to do with us. Because when you and this has happened in other countries where you reduce a metropolitan area to basically a captive group of people, and they may hate your guts with every fiber of their being, but they can't get out. They can't afford to get out. And so they keep voting in the same corrupt machines because they're relying on them to survive, which is an oversimplification, but it may be in part what we're witnessing here.
Yeah, very, very interesting. There were a couple things that went by the past couple of days I thought that we should discuss, and one of which is a very interesting story, and I'm still trying to figure him out a little bit, and that's Overstock's former CEO. Everyone remembers back to last year where he was tied to the Clinton probe, as well as, I believe, having either sleeping with a spy or something of that nature. But here recently, he's been popping up quite a bit, and one of which where he offered to pay some cyber experts to try to research, to try to dig in. And then more importantly, on a few recent interviews, one of which on InfoWars, and I can't recall the other one, where he alleges that back in 2016, prior to that the FBI actually approached him. And again, he very well could have been compromised and it never went through. And that's why this information came out in regards to, what transpired with him. In his allegations, he says that a few FBI agents came to him and asked him to set up a sting operation with Hillary Clinton, where he was to establish a bribe for her. And so long story short, he had previously worked with the FBI. I can't recall during what I believe was some type of banking or some other type of investigation.
Yes, correct.
But long story short, he says that this sting did go down. It was successful, that Hillary did accept this bribe. I think it was upwards of $14 million. Later on, during that same time period, when he had the information, he met with the FBI agents. They're like, "Hey, listen, you need to forget everything that we just did. You need to just wash it from your brain, your memory, and be done with it." He's like, I don't understand, what just transpired here. And he kept pushing them, asking, "Where's this directive coming from? Who's behind this?" And what he alleges is that Obama set up this sting operation back in 2016 because the thought process was that they were going to go ahead and to ensure that Hillary was going to win the 2016 election. And they wanted this to happen so that they could properly manage her, that they had this behind her. Now, again, he gets a little bit mixed messages, because then he comes back and says, then they found out that she was going to win and heads were going to roll if they found out who was behind this and all this kind of information. But I'm just, curious of what your guys' thoughts are. You may not have heard this story and everything, but just the timing of it. It's just kind of odd that he's coming out with the timing like right now. Why is he revealing this information?
Let me jump in here because I'm emotional about this. And then
go for it.
While we still got time in the show, I got two other sound bites quick ones I wanted to throw out there. CJ, I'm really thankful you brought this up because, wow, when this first happened with this CEO, when I saw it, my first thought was, and this was when he first had to step down. He was appearing on, I think, Fox News, said, "I don't know what the hell's going on. I was involved with all these federal agencies. The agencies are sitting there saying we neither confirm nor deny we were working with him, et cetera, et cetera." And I remember thinking at the time, this somebody let the dog out the back door. This was never supposed to get out. This guy was never supposed to open his mouth, because he was saying back then that there were, and again, folks, this was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He was saying it was shortly after Donald Trump was in office. He was repeatedly saying there's these honeypots out there, and the government wanted me to go along with it so that I could entrap these people. And again, back then I thought, okay, I'm gonna file this one for the long term. This is one of the things I like about Mike Moore's show, because he'll talk about something like this and say, I warned all of you 3 years ago, and now the media is picking it up and everybody's acting like it's some big deal. He's back in the news, yes. And when I saw the whole, Hillary and others were to take money from these folks, and that's how various other forms of blackmail would be sustained. I'm throwing my hands in the air up over on this side of the show. That's how this happens, folks. Is they just give you money, and it's like known that the money or the favor or whatever it is part of all this interlocking blackmail that keeps no one from screwing up the three-dimensional chessboard, or V, as you and Juan have said, the fifth dimensional chessboard. That's how they do this. That's how no one can make a move without upsetting the system, because you're going to bring, and I'm sounding a bit flamboyant when I say this, but that's why the various real powers that be can't have any of these things get too far out of control, because they know it will bring the whole thing down. And if it comes crashing down, then people are going to start looking for them. And that's where, again, credit where credit is due. That's where Patrick Ryan's theories and so on, where he said, we're living in a world now where you can get to billionaires by various means. You can hurt them, not necessarily kill them, but it's like you can harm their interests. You can bring them down through cyber means and similar, even quote unquote what he described as trillionaires. And this guy reminds me a lot of Conrad Black, because for those of you who may be aware, Conrad Black was a major media personality. He had a lot of inside information, a lot of people, and he was a player. Let's call it what it is. He was on the inside. How much on that 33 degrees, I have no idea, but he was fairly near the top. And then, boom, somebody saw an opportunity and they took Black out, and he went to prison, and his wife recently published a book. Here's what many of you don't know about Conrad Black. There's a number of sources out there that have said this. I've heard this from people I know in law enforcement circles and so on. The reason why we were able to get Epstein was because of Conrad Black. That's how that happened, because he was mad. And this is why in, mafia circles in Italy and other parts of the world, or any kind of organized crime, this is where there's that old rule about you got to take everybody out. Because if you leave them alive, they're going to come after you with everything they've got. And as soon as Conrad Black got out of prison, he came out guns blazing. I think the other thing about this gentleman is that he has remained fairly in the public eye, and it doesn't guarantee his safety. But if anything were to happen to him, it would draw a lot of attention, asking questions about, wait a minute, because we got another person talking about Hillary Clinton, and look, he shot himself with a nail gun 15 times in the head, like your famous Rogues Gallery V. What was it, 2 years ago or a year ago? You gave, or you went through nearly everyone who's ever had something to do with the Clintons and died mysteriously.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which also, folks, raises the events of the past 48 hours, which is what that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation investigator who was looking into the staffer on the Republican Senate candidate, the woman candidate, that investigator blew up in his car the other day. I saw
another one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, baby.
Holy crap! What?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's two so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
So GBI investigator blows up.
Yes. And he was looking into what happened to her staffer who died,
Yeah, Loeffler staffer.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Holy
and then the other one I wanted to touch upon was I did a little happy dance over here a day or two ago. Jean-Luc Brunel, they finally found him.
Yes.
They
the
arrested
mysterious
him.
Brunel.
Yes. And see, that's another thing too for everybody on the show is, if you're sitting there or like over here with a whiteboard, if you started tracking all of the weird stuff, even by the standards of V, CJ, and myself, if you started tracking the really weird stuff that's gone on just the past 2 weeks, really, it's notable. I mean, it's really notable. I mean, it's like, why? I know people have tried to wave it off saying, well, why is all this Hunter Biden stuff coming out? Well, and the running theory is what? Well, Nancy Pelosi will use that to invoke the 25th Amendment, move Kamala into the presidency. Who knows? But
Yeah.
definitely something to monitor. It's not just that, though. There's even the mainstream media has been dropping stories where I'm looking at the screen, scratching my head, going, why are you all talking about this? You if this was a couple of weeks ago or even before the election, your building would have been on fire and you would have not brought this up. So there's all sorts of details now that are leaking out, stories that are kind of hitting the light about even like John Kerry, other people being accused of these various financial things going on. And then again, she was I don't want to say low-level staffer. That's not fair, but she was a staff member of this senatorial candidate in Georgia, quote unquote, died mysteriously. She does not appear, disclaimer to the lords out there.
God.
She does not appear to be like a Seth Rich kind of person, as far as
Right.
I'm using a kind of a loaded word here of importance, but it's just damn unusual that she dies. Her boss doesn't want to comment on it. They have a private ceremony for her. She's spoken of well, which again, folks, head fake. Why? Ask yourselves that question. Why in the hell is a Georgia, for those who aren't familiar, all U.S. states have their own bureaus of investigation. So Indiana has the IBI, the Indiana Bureau of Investigation. Pennsylvania, all U.S. states, they've got their own bureaus of investigation or state investigators. And some of the most top-notch ones out there are New York, New Jersey, California, states who've got to deal with some heavy stuff. Why in the name of God was a Georgia Bureau of Investigator looking into what was just a natural causes death? We're all, for V and myself, we're fixated on, wow, this dude's dead. I'm stepping back even further going, wait a minute. Why was he even looking into it?
Yeah.
She died of no known, they didn't say natural causes, but it's like nothing nefarious. And now the weather. And then this guy's car blows up in classic mafia style.
Wow. Jeez,
and then
we're in full on asymmetric war, Veles.
We are. And again, I've on my own little distro to people, I've brought up the following, and I know it's kind of been mentioned on the show here. Trust but verify. And I joked about this on an earlier show about the saying from the Middle East about trust in God, but tie up your camel. Because there's this joke about if the camel gets the nose under the tent, the next thing you know, you're going to have a camel in your tent. I've advised a number of people lately in kind of the whole prepper thing. I've had people reaching out to me saying, what should I do? How much should I acquire, et cetera. I'm very mindful. If it's the age-old saying of, if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. But really, to all of you on the show, even with CJ and his technical wizardry having to move us over to Rogue 420 a week or so ago, and that one was not my fault because of the Miami Vice episode.
That was my fault.
It's not your fault, dude. You had C-SPAN, for God's sakes. How can you get that worked up over C-SPAN? You didn't have some crazed individual on a ship saying, "I'm pretty sure with copper you can get rid of COVID."
And they actually removed that strike because we were correct. We adamantly stated that, hey, here's the information. We're not saying anything else related to it. This isn't medical advice. We're just playing this Senate hearing that's real, and let that doctor speak. So there was nothing, right? Conspiracy wise or anything that we're jumping to. One other thing, we got to get ready for Harley here real quick, but also just want to share a very open fight between David Knight, who I have a lot of respect for. I always enjoyed David Knight's reporting, very humble in doing it, a true patriot and everything. But I'm not sure if you guys caught the word that Alex Jones fired him yesterday. They've had some, open arguments in regards to some of the reporting, some of the so he tweeted out yesterday that Alex Jones just fired me. I sent him an email last night, just wishing him his best of luck and everything, and he responded that he's still kind of in shock. Alex used the excuse that InfoWars is going broke and having trouble to pay the bills and everything, and even Dave tonight was like, that's really not the case at all. So that information, and then also this was more work of Project Veritas, and it's very timely that this came out. But they actually released an actual audio recording of Julian Assange talking with one of the attorneys for the U.S. State Department, where he openly, warned the State Department. Apparently, that WikiLeaks had hate to use the word rogue, but an employee that went AWOL that had access to all of the secret documents, the all the information, and they had that information. And he's like, listen, we're trying everything we can legally to stop this guy, to find him and everything, but he has information that could be very harmful to the U.S. State Department. So I want to let you know that we have the data. We're going through it because we're going to retract any information that could be harmful to individuals, especially any type of operatives and everything. But so this is very timely because this just kind of just shows you a perfect example where Julian Assange did work with the State Department in terms of trying to give them warning, to say, hey, this is what's coming out, this is what's going on, and this is something for all those that are tuning in that we still need to continue to do, is on Twitter, whatever social platforms you're on, to free Assange, free Snowden, and let's add in there Ross Ulbricht from the Silk Road. So, gentlemen, that's all I have.
Very, very well said. Hey guys, sorry about that. I got knocked out of nowhere. It's crazy. The internet's been nuts. It's been absolutely nuts.
Your internet service, V, is killing me. And
I'm
sure
sorry,
it's driving
man.
you nuts.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck to do. I don't know if I need to. Maybe it's my router, my browser, my shrouder. I have no idea. I need to probably go out to Best Buy and just buy a brand new high-powered mesh network and reinstall it or something. I don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah, it's weird.
You may need me and CJ to drive over to New York and take a look, see if we can do something.
In the meantime, I'm using tinfoil on my head, and I'm I have it pointed up really high just to get the reception going.
There you go. Well, we've got 2 days with Harley here. Does he have what do you call it? Anything groundbreaking, or just a follow up from yesterday's?
I think it's probably a follow up, right, Sage? Harley has always something new to add.
Harley's was actually a re-upload from last Friday. I think it was the most recent one. So yeah,
got it. Wait, are we going live with Harley in 2 minutes or what?
We are, yes.
All right, cool. All right, folks, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share. Hit the thumbs up button because it helps us fight the algos. And make sure that you are, stay tuned with us as we move to Harley in about 2 or 3 minutes. And fellas, thank you so much for being on with us. Folks, enjoy your weekends. Take it away, CJ.